Good evening, friends. Right, welcome back to our sessions on Python for AI. So we have successfully completed 12 days, right? So the data types concept is being done. And next to data types, we have also understood type conversions. Am I right? Yes. So today we are going to start a new topic. Okay, it is on two different functions that are widely used. One is print function. Then followed by print function, we are going to understand input function. Okay, so then next to understanding these functions, we'll also understand different ways to build a Python program. What are the different ways to build a Python program? So let us get started with the new topics. Okay, so to display the result of a Python program, we have an inbuilt function. Right? So and the inbuilt function that we use is print function. From day one, probably from day two, we are using this print function. Am I right? Yes, we are using print function. But we don't know what exactly does this print function does. So in today's topic, we are going to understand how print function works and what is the purpose of using print function and what are the different syntaxes that we have when we use print function. Then next to print function, we are also going to understand one more function. It is input. It is input. Right? So let me start with the first function print. Right? So in order to display the result of any Python program, okay, so we use a predefined function called print function. Okay, in simple words, print function helps us to display the result. It helps us to display the result in the console. So within this area, I'm able to see the output, right? So that is just because of print function. And the print function contains multiple syntaxes. There are multiple syntaxes. Okay, so we'll start one syntax. We'll understand one followed by the other. Okay, for each and every syntax, we have an explanation and examples. And I want everyone to be active and respond in the chat. Okay, so the first syntax is, what is the first syntax? Print function of message. So this particular syntax, it helps us to display the messages. Okay, so the str type data that is present as a message will be displayed in the console. So the syntax is very simple. Within the function, we use the message, whatever the message that we want to see it in the output. So what are we doing in line number 2255? I'm using the print function. Yes, I'm using print function in which I want to print a message. What does the message say? The message says, hello Python world. Hello Python world. Right? So let me execute line number 2255. It has resulted as, it printed hello Python world as it is. Yes. So what kind of data, do we have inside the parenthesis? What is this? So this is going to print, hello Python world as it is. So we have a message and this message will be printed as is in the console. Okay, in the console, I want to print a message using print function. So here we are going to use the first syntax of print, right? So this will print me hello Python world. What makes the difference between 2255, then 2256, 57 and 58? The message is same, but what is getting changed? What is the difference? So in 2255, we are using str type data to print, right? And even in 56, it is str type. 57, str type. Okay. So 58 again, the same type. But what makes the difference? It is the quotations. The quotations. The sequence of values, the sequence of characters, they are enclosed in double quotations or single quotations. We can also have single line string data in triple single quotations as well as triple double quotations. Okay, so all of them, they represent same, but I'm just changing the quotation marks. Okay, but it is going to result as the same output. Just have a look. It will give me same hello Python world. Then hello Python world. And even for the last line, the output will be same. Okay, so the difference in the quotation marks is just talking, we are just understanding it. Apart from it, with respect to the message, it is same. It just prints the same message in all these lines. Making sense? Yes. Now let us understand syntax 2. In syntax 1, using print function, I'm able to print a message. But in syntax 2, we were able to print, it helps us to display values. Either I can display only one value. If not, I can also display multiple values. If I want to print multiple values at a time, yes, that is also possible. Right? So probably if you go back through the data types concept, we have used print function to print the value, the type, the address. So we just followed the syntax to only there. I hope it is making sense. Now just I'm going to take a few examples where syntax 2 is being implemented. What are we doing in line number 2263? 2263. Going to store a integer value 10 in a variable in an object A. Yes. So I'm going to store a value 10 in an object A, and which type will be used? Obviously int type will be used. Why int type? Int belongs to fundamental category data types, and the purpose of fundamental category data types is to store a single value. Then coming to int type, the purpose of int type is to store single values which does not have the numbers which does not have floating values, decimal values. So let me print A. I'm going to use print function to print a value. So this is going to display the value in the console. See, this will print 10. Can you also print multiple values together? Yes. Ensure that these values are comma separated. So what am I doing? The next lines. 2266. So storing 10 in ST number. Yes. Then storing A sequence of characters, dosum in S name, done. Done. Now, we are just using print function to print the output. Okay. So how many values am I going to print? Is it just only one value? No. I'm going to print two values. One is ST number and the next one is S name. So I'm going to print the values that are present in both the objects. Okay. So here I'm just following syntax 2. Syntax 2 helps us to print multiple values or single value to the console. See. So this will print two values. The value that we have in ST number and S name. Clear? Good. Then what about syntax 3? What about syntax 3? When it comes to syntax 3, we are going to use print function where I can use print function to print messages come values. So both messages and values can be printed together. Okay, so this helps us to print values and messages in the console. Making sense? Yes. So what are we doing in line number 2273? Storing a value 10 in A. Then I'm going to store value 20 in B. Yes. Then I'm going to perform addition using addition operator. This is called addition operator. Okay. So from tomorrow we are going to understand a new topic. It is operators. So probably there we'll understand what is an operator. Okay. What are the different types of operators and all. We know that A plus B which performs sum addition. Okay. So what value gets stored in C? Friends, what value gets stored in C? 10 plus 20 will be 30. Right? So this is going to store value 30 in C. I'm going to execute line number 2273. Then 2274. So 20 gets stored in B. So addition is being performed. A plus B, 10 plus 20 will be 30 and 30 gets stored in C. Done. We have three objects A, B and C. Now, what if I want to print a message and value together? I'll just go and use syntax 3. I'll just go and use syntax 3. So what happens if I execute line number 2276? Good. So we have a message. This is the message. And apart from message, we also have value. So both has to be printed. Is it possible? Yes, it is possible. We can print both messages come values together. Okay. So initially the message gets printed. Then coming to that, to the next, it is going to print the value that is present in A. So what will be the output for line number 2276? Value of A is equals to 10. Because A holds in A which value we have? We have 10. Clear? In the same way, I want you guys to respond for 2277. 2277. So what will be the output here? Will the output be same? Yes, the output will be same. What is the difference? The quotation marks. That's it, right? If you observe, the difference between line number 2276 and 2277 is just with the respect to the message. In the message, only the quotation marks is being changed. So the output will be same. Value of A is equals to 10. Good, good. Keep going. But what will be the output for line number 2278? Will the message be printed first or the value? What will be the output? Which value it is going to print initially? Will it print the message? Is the value of A gets printed or the value that is present in A gets printed? The answer will be, 10 is the value of A. Good. Why? Because we have 10 inside A, and which value gets printed first? It is A. So the output should be 10 is the value of A. Perfect. Then I'm going to just store 100 inside A. I'm executing. So it stores 100 inside A. Done. And I'm going to print two values, a value and a message. So this will result as, this is going to print 100 is the value of A. Why? Because we have just executed line number 2280. So 100 got stored in A. It's not 10. Clear? Perfect. Now, so using the same values, storing 10 in A, 20 in B, then performing addition. I'm just performing sum of two values. So 10 plus 20 will be 30. I'm going to store 30 in C. Done. So 10 in A, 20 in B, and 30 in C. I want the output for line number 2268. I'm using print function and I'm going to print a value and a message. What will be the output? What will be the output? The output will be sum is equals to 30. Why 30? Because we have C. As it is going to print C, what value do we have in C? We have 30. So the output will be sum is equals to 30. Clear? Then for the next line, 2287, 30 is the sum. I'm just changing, friends. You have to focus. I'm using print function. But I'm changing the message and the value. You have to focus on the positions. Initially, the value gets printed, that is 30, followed by the message. So 30 is the sum gets printed to the console. Good, good, good. What will be the output for line number 2288? Where we have, multiple messages, then multiple values getting printed to the console. Is it accepted? Yes, it is accepted. This particular syntax helps us to print messages come values. So what will be the output? Sum of 10 and 20 is equals to 30. Yes. Okay. So in this way, you have to start, typing the code. Use print function and print the values to the console. Sum of 10 and 20 is equals to 30. Clear? Yes. Then I'm just taking one more value and I'm storing ST number. Okay. So taking a str type data. and storing in sname. str type data gets stored. So what will be the output for line number 2292? Using print function, I'm going to print messages and values. So obviously the output will be my number is 10 and my name is Rosam. Good. So whatever you have in the message will be printed as it is in the console. Then whatever the value that is present in the variable in the object, that gets printed next to the message. And the same happens in each and every case. Simple? Yes, it is simple because we are just listening to the session, right? You should also practice. When you practice, you can memorize for a long time, and even when you are working on problem, okay, so even it will make you easy for building your logics. Keep going. Then we also have next syntax, but this time not just printing messages and values. Okay, so we are going to print messages and values with format function. Okay, so I'm going to use format function to print messages and values both. For that, I'm going to use the same values, okay, 10 and rosum, and storing in the same objects st number and sname. Done. I'm done. Then I'm going to execute 2298, in which we have print function. So print function helps us to print the output to the console. It helps us to display the output to the console. Okay. So what it is going to display? We have a message. We have a message. Then we have format function. There is format function in which we have the values st number and sname. So what happens when we use format function? Okay, formatting done. It performs formatting. So what exactly happens is this formatting can be done in multiple ways, friends. Right? So we are just understanding the first type, the first method. So my name is Flower Breezes is what it is written here. And my number is, empty flower breezes, and my name is empty flower breezes is what we have. Right? So dot format, within the format function, we have stnum and sname. So what exactly happens is this format function helps us to format the values that are present in these objects, at these positions. So wherever we have the curly braces, the flower braces, at these positions, the values gets formatted. So the output will be my number is 10 because the value that is present in ST number is 10 and my name is Rosam. That is what gets printed. Yep. So let me execute. So this is just one way of using format function. There are multiple ways. So if you understood the concept, here we have the same example. Okay. So where we are trying to print messages and values together, but using format function. Okay. So we are going to use format function. Storing 10 in A, 20 in B. So obviously int type will be used. Then performing addition A plus B, 10 plus 20 will be 30. And this 30 gets stored in C. Done. Now, what function am I using? We are going to use format function. We are using format function. So what happens? What will be the output for line number 2303? 2303. For this line. sum of, we have flower braces, then next to it we have n flower braces is equals to flower braces dot format function, in which we have A, B and C. A, B and C. So what will be the output? Obviously, the output will be sum of the first value that we have is A. So inside A we have 10. So sum of 10, and what is the next value? Next object is 20. So sum of 10 and 20 is equals to the third object that we have is C. So it is sum of 10 and 20 is equals to 30, will be printed to the console. This is what it is going to print to the console. Let us cross check. Let us print it. Yes. Sum of 10 and 20 is equals to 30. Clear? In the same way, respond for line number 2304. The next line. What is the message that we have? The message will be printed as it is. Yes. But since we are using format function, the values that we have for the objects like A, B, C gets formatted in the message. Wherever we have the flower braces, curly braces. So what will be the output for line number 2304? Sum within braces will have 10 comma 20 is equals to 30 will be printed. Let me execute. Cross check. Yes. Just formatting is being done, friends. That's it. Nothing else apart from it. Clear? Now, I want you guys to understand 2305. Just have a look at line number 2305. Using print function? Yes. I'm using print function to print messages and values using format function. Using format function. But there is a big message. What do you understand from this message? Anyways, let me bring this to the next line. This time you can understand. So at the first position, A value gets formatted. Then at the second position of flower braces, B value gets formatted. So sum of 10 comma 20 is equals to, at the third position, it is going to format A plus B. Whatever the value that we get at A plus B gets formatted at this position. So we'll get sum of 10 comma 20 is equals to 30. Fine. This is what? The same output. But is it the only message? No. We have something else. What it is? Backslash T, which means tab space. Then next to it we have sub of, then again the same values A, B. So sub of 10 comma 20 is equals to A minus B. So in simple, we are going to perform subtraction. Okay, we are going to get the difference. So what will be the output? 10 minus 20 will be minus 10. So the output will be sum of 10 comma 20 is equals to 30. Then tab space sub of 10 comma 20 is equals to minus 10. So let me execute the entire line together. See, the same, whatever we have discussed, we see the same output. Yes. Clear? Right. So we were also able to use print function and print messages and values using format function. Okay. Then we also have next syntax where we are going to print messages and values. Okay. Both of them using format specifiers. We'll be using format. We have used format function, right? So far. But instead of using format function, we are going to use some kind of wild characters, format specifiers, and we are going to get the output. Just have a look. A is equals to 10. I'm going to store 10 in A. So obviously int type will be used to store the value. Then 1.2 I want to store in B. So which type will be used to store 1.2? Will it use bool? Will PBM assigns complex? Or which type will be used? For storing 1.2, it uses float. Float type will be used to store the value 1.2. To store 1.2. Then I'm going to perform addition A plus B. I'm going to perform addition. So 10 plus 1.2, it will be 11.2. And this value gets stored in C. So let me print it. Yes. In order to store 11.2, again, float type will be used to store the value. So done. I want you guys to give me the output for 2313. Line number 2313. Using print function, what we are going to print? What are we printing in line number 2313? It is going to print sum is equals to 11.2. Yes, because inside C, we have 11.2 got stored. Simple. Yes. Now, I can also print the same output using format function. Yes, I'll use dot format. Within the function, I'll just pass C. Okay, so at this place, wherever we have the empty flower braces, so at this place, the value gets formatted. The same output is what we are going to get. But instead of using format function, can I directly use format specifiers? Is it possible? Yes, it is. Okay, since I want to, print a float type value, we have to use percentage %f. What is a format specifier for float? It is percentage %f. Making sense? Yes. So then you should also keep it as percentage %c. So that means this particular value 11.2 gets formatted at this format specifier, at the place of the format specifier. Okay. So the output will be same, friends. Will the output be same or not? Just have a look. Is it same? Not exactly. Where do you see the difference? I see the difference in the zeros. Whenever you're using this format specifiers, especially percentage %f, it will return as the value till 6 decimals. The value will be written till 6 decimals. You can also keep a stop on number of decimals to be written. Right? So what am I doing in the next line? I just want only 2 decimals to be given as output. So I'll have a I'll just keep it as 0.2. That means I just want the output till 2 decimals is what I'm telling. Okay, so this will result as sum is equals to 11.20. Only the float value will be written till 2 decimals. See, especially if you are using format specifiers with the float, you'll see the value till 6 decimal values. Okay, you can also have a control on the number of decimals to be written by just passing the number of values. So the output will be 11.20. Clear? Yes. Now I want the answer for line number 2317. Using print function, I'm going to print a message and the values, but are we using format function? Is there any format function in the parenthesis? No. We have format specifiers. Percentage D, it's for digit. Percentage F for float. Okay. So A holds a digit value. So the value that is present in A gets formatted at percentage D place. Then at percentage F, the value that is present in B gets formatted at percentage F. But in C, we have 11.2 as the value. I just want only one decimal to be written. That is what I have kept it as 0.1 F. So what will be the output? The output will be sum of 10 and what is the value that is present in B? It is 1.2, but still you have to get 1.2000. 5 zeros you will see. Why? By default, it is going to return as 6 decimal values. We did not have a control on it. Okay, we did not specify number of decimal values we want to return. So it will return all the zeros, 5 zeros, and here under C we are going to get it as 11.2. Just print me C. That is what? Focus. It is not 1.2, it will be 1.2000. 5 zeros it is going to return. Why 5 zeros? When you don't have a control on the number of decimals to be written, it is going to return all the 6 values. By default, it will return the 6 values in the decimals. Then for line number 2318, what is the difference? Even I just want only one decimal value to be written for the B value. So I'm just passing it as 0.1 F. So this will return me the same output, but instead of 1.20000, it will just return me 1.2. See. Clear? Is it clear, friends? Respond for the next line. 2319. Sum of percentage F. The value that you have in A, is it a float value? No, it's a digit. But what format I am using? What format specifier did we use? Percentage F. So what will be the output? Just go for a wild guess. For line number 2319. What will be the output? The output will be. I'm waiting for your responses, friends. 10 became a float value. Why? Did we use percentage D as the format specifier? No. I just used percentage F. So this is going to convert the digit value, the int value into a float value. And it will return all the 6 decimal values. It is not 10.0, you'll get 10.0000. You'll get all the 6 decimal values. Right. So I want the output for line number 2320. If you observe, all the lines from 2317 till 2320, all of them are same. I'm just changing the decimal value places. Okay. I'm just having a control on the number of decimal values for each and every format specifier. If you observe. So what will be the output? Good, good. I want only one decimal value for A. For B, again the one. For C also I want one. So the output will be sum of 10.0 and 1.2 is equals to 11.2 is what we get. Am I right? Yes. Perfect. Just understand the concept. If you understand the concept, you can answer any kind of question. Then we have a few more examples we have over here, right? So what are we doing? Storing a value 10 in ST number, then storing ROSM in SNAME. So I want you guys to respond for line number 2324. %D is for %D is a format specifier for digit values. %F is for float values. For the first time we are using percentage yes. This is for a sequence of characters. String data, right? So this will return me, my number is 10 and my name is Rosam. Clear? Is it clear, friends? Yep. Now, what are we doing in line number 2326? Storing a Boolean value. I'm going to store, true. So bool type will be used to store true value in B. Done. Good, good. Then what are we doing in line number 2327? I'm going to print a message followed by, I'm also going to print a value but using format specifiers. Percentage yes is what I'm using, but before formatting, what are we doing here? str of B. What does it mean? str of B means what? It means type conversion is being done. Yesterday we have discussed, right, type conversion. Can we convert a, bool value to str type data using str of bool, str of true? Yes, we can. Typecasting can be performed. Type conversion can be performed. So once the bool value gets converted to str type data, then the formatting will be done. So the output will be val of B is equals to true. Perfect. Right? I can also receive the same output using format function. I can also use the same output using format function. So I'll use print function. So it performs formatting. The value of B gets formatted at this position. So the value of B is equals to true gets printed. The same output. Clear? This time you guys have to respond. Okay. So I'm going to store value 100 in A. Done. 100 got stored in A. Then what are we doing in line number 2331? Using print function, we are going to print a message along with its value. So where format specifiers are being used, percentage %d. So that means the value that is present in A, as it is a int value, int type data, it gets printed as it is. So val of A is equals to 100 gets printed. Yes. Then what happens if I execute line number 2332? I'm using print function to print a message and the values. This time, we are also performing type conversion. So I'm going to convert int type data into string. Is it possible? Is it possible to convert int type data into str type? Yes or no? Yes. Any type of data, it might be int, float, complex, bool. We can perform all the different types of values into str type using str function. We have understood, right? So friends, if you are joining for the first time and if you haven't gone through the previous session, just go through the previous sessions. Right? So this topic has been covered in the last session only. Type conversion. So 100 gets converted to str type data and the formatting will be done using format specifier. It is percentage %yes. So the value of A is equals to 100 gets printed. The same output. Keep going. Then what will be the output for line number 233? 2333. My bad. 2333. Are we performing typecasting? Type conversion is what we are going to do here. Int type data is being converted to float type. Is it possible? Is it possible? Can we convert an int type data to float type? Yes, it is possible. So what happens? So 100 will be converted to float initially. Okay. So it becomes 100.0. But what format specifier are we using? Percentage %f. So the output will be 100.00. Perfect. Good friends. Now you're on the track. Observe the format specifier, guys. Observe, you have to observe the console, the output. Right? So we have understood print function in which each and every syntax was being done with multiple examples. Right? So next to print function, we also have the other function called input function. What is the purpose of using input function is to read the data dynamically from keyboard. Okay, the data can be read as it is dynamically from the keyboard. For that we have input function. We have input function and this input function is of two types, predefined input functions we have. One is input function and the next one is input of message. Okay, so let us start understanding input function. What is the help of or what is the use of input function? Let us understand. Just make a point. Input function is very important function because it helps us to read the data. Whatever the data that is given by the end user, dynamically it gets read because of the input function only. Okay, so input function, we are going to use input function for reading any type of data from the keyboard, in the form of str. So whatever might be the data that is given as input, by default it gets converted to str type and gets stored. to the object. When we use input function, very important question. When you are using an input function and this input function helps us to read the data, right? The value. Okay. So this value gets converted to str type, whatever it might be. And once if you have the data in the form of str type, you can also perform typecasting techniques, right? So all the techniques we have already understood. Okay, so it might be int, float, complex, bool. We have understood all the different types of typecasting techniques. Coming to the syntax, it's very simple. The variable name is equals to input function. That's it. So when we execute this input function, it accepts, it reads the data from the keyboard and this gets converted to str type and gets stored in the variable name. See, even if you go and check what is the type of variable name, you'll get the output as str. Clear? So let us have a quick look on a few examples where we will use just input function. We are going to use input function and let's see how input function helps us to read the data from the keyboard. Okay. For that, I'm going to come up with a program, a Python program for multiplication of two numbers. The very basic program. Okay. So this multiplication of two numbers, we are doing it in, probably 5 different ways. In 5 ways, we are going to do it. So just focus one by one. So I'm just going to start it. What are we doing? In line number 2, 3, 5, 6. I'm using print function. So which syntax of print function is being used? Syntax 1. What is the purpose of syntax 1 in print function? It helps us to print the messages. So what message gets printed? Enter first value gets printed in the console. In the console, this message gets printed when you execute 2, 3, 5, 6. So let me do it. Done. See. Done. Then what is the next line in the program? I'm just using input function. I'm using input function. Okay. So when you execute the line 2, 3, 5, 7, it asks the end user to give the value. You are supposed to give the value. So let me execute line number 2, 3, 5, 7. See, here you see, it got executed. No, it is still under execution. This red color button, no, next to the console, you see the red color button. This means that particular line is still under execution. Okay, so what happens if it get executed? This button gets converted to gray color. So what does it mean is still line number 2, 3, 5, 7 is still under execution. Then what are we supposed to do? You have to pass the value. What is the purpose of input function? Input function helps us to read the data from the keyboard. So let me pass a value. I'm just passing a very small value. I'm just keeping it as 2. Then after giving 2, I just clicked on enter. You see, it got turned to gray color. So that means line number 2, 3, 5, 7, execution is done. 2, 3, 5, 7 got executed. Then in the next line, I'm using print function to print a message saying that enter second value. So the same message will be printed in the console. Done. Now I'm using input function again. Okay, but let me go back. I'll go back. You see here, after executing line number 2, 3, 5, 7, where I being the end user, I just gave the number as 2. Okay, so where this number 2 gets saved in the memory, in which object it gets saved? It gets saved in variable A. So let me go back to variable explorer. Okay, the name of the variable is A. The value is 2, but Which type is used? By default, str type will be used. When we are using input function, that is what we have here. Okay. By default, str type will be used to store the data. Even you can observe now, friends. I'm going to execute line number 2359. Done? No, it is not done. I still see it as red color. So I have to pass a value. Let me give 3. 3. Okay. Then I'll click on enter. The moment I clicked on enter, you see the value that got stored in B is 3. But what kind of type is being used to store 3 in B? It is str. It is not int. Why it is not int? Why it is str? Because input function is being used. Okay, so very important. Whenever you are using input function, the purpose of input function is to read the data from the keyboard, and by default the data will be saved in str type. The data gets stored using str type. Then I'm using print function to print the message. Along with the message, I'm also going to print values. Okay, I'm using format function. So formatting will be done. So where we have value of a is equals to 2 gets formatted, and is type is equals to, what is the type of a? It is str. So str gets formatted here. The output will be value of a is 2 is equals to 2 and is type is equals to class str will be written. In the same way, will it return for b as well? Yes. Val of b is equals to 3 and is type is equals to str gets returned as output. Okay. If you are clear on the syntaxes, you can play with the program, guys. Okay. You can change your script as you want. But just follow the syntaxes. Syntaxes play a crucial role. If you violate them, you'll get errors. Then the question raises, what is the purpose of this program? The program helps us to, find the multiplication of two members. What are the two numbers that were being passed? 2, 3. But are they in int format or float? No, they are in str. Which type is used to store these values? str is being used. So can you multiply these values as is? No. We cannot multiply the values. For that reason, I'm just converting the values. Type conversion is what we are performing. In line number 2363 and 2364, the value of A and B are getting converted to float. So what will be the output for line number 2363? 2363, the output. Which value gets stored in X1? Which value gets stored in X1? And which value gets stored in X2? I know it is float, but I want the value. 2.0. Good. 2.0. See, X1 stores 2.0 and the type is float. X2 stores 3.0. Perfect. You see in the variable explorer, the values for X1 and X2 are 2.0 and 3.0. Then in the next line, we are performing the multiplication. So this is called multiplication operator. So probably in the next class, we'll understand. Assume that we are performing multiplication now. So 2.0 multiplied by 3.0. The output will be 6.0. So the value that gets stored in X3 is 6.0. Done. Done. Now I'm going to use format function. I'm using format function and using print function within the line. You are going to print a message along with the values. The values gets formatted in the message. Okay, within this message, the output will be mul of x1, the value of x1 2.0, 3.0 is equals to 6.0 will be the output. Clear? It cannot be 6, it will be 6.0. It will not be 6. The same program, I'll take the same program and I'll make it crisp. I'll make it crisp. I'll just reduce the number of lines. The unwanted lines that are present here, I'm just removing it. See. So using print function, it is going to print enter two values. A message will be printed. Done. It got executed. Okay. In line number 2371, what are we doing? I'm using input function, right? So this input function, when we execute, it reads the data from the keyboard. So once after executing it, it doesn't mean it got executed, right? It has to read the data from the keyboard. So the end users have to give the value. Let me keep it as 3. Done. Done. You see, for A, we have 3. What type? str type. Then I'll do the same for B as well. Let me give 4. So which type is used to store 4? str type. Then the unwanted, whatever we have understood, I'm just removing those lines. Then converting the values of A and B to float. So it becomes 3.0 and 4.0. 3.0 will be stored in x1 and 4.0 gets stored in x2. And finally, we are multiplying. So 3.0 into 4.0 will return as 12.0. Let us see x3. So the value that got stored in x3 is 12.0. Print of, and finally we have print function. So within the print function, we have a message. And what are these? These are, format specifiers. For each and every value, x1 and x2 and x3, we just used 0.2f. That means we should have 2 decimal values. So the output will be mul of 3.00, then 4.00 is equals to 12.00 will be the output. Clear? Just have a look. Yes, perfect. Still, can I reduce the lines? Yes, I can still reduce the lines. You see, this is going to print enter 2 values. What makes the difference between the previous line of previous program and this program? We got the input values initially, then we are converting into float type. Then the type conversion is being done. But here, once after getting the value from the keyboard, in the same page, the value gets converted to str type data gets converted to float type data. Even same here. Okay. So whatever the output that the input that we pass, that gets converted to float value. Let us go and check. See, I'm going to pass 5 and this 5 gets stored in x1. Let us have a look. Is it float value? Yes. Why it became float immediately? Even though if I'm using input function, because the output of input function will be sent to float. So type conversion happens from str type to float type. The same, I'm going to do it on x2. So let me keep it over here 6 and let me click on enter. It became 6.0. 6.0 and then printing the message and using format function. So directly the values of x1, x2 and the multiplication, the product value gets formatted in the message. The output will be mul of 5.0 and 6.0 is equals to 30.0. Clear? Keep going. Just understand the concepts. If you are clear on the concepts, when you practice taking multiple examples, that will help you to memorize for long time. The output will be 30.0. Right. So till here we just understood only input function. What if input of message function is being used? So that means within the input function, we can also pass a message. Yes, this particular function, it helps us to read the data. Any type of data can be read from the keyboard. Okay. And this is going to read in the format of str, but additionally, it helps us, the users, whoever might be the user, it is going to additionally help the user for the prompting messages. Okay, so for better understanding, at the user level, we can pass messages. So input of message function is going to help us there compared to input function alone. The functionality is same, friends. You take input or input of message function. The purpose of both the functions is reading any type of data. Okay, so that data will be read in the format of str. But what is the additional advantage that you get in input of message function? You'll have the prompting message for the user level. Right? So I'm going to take the same input of message function and I'll come up with a code for multiplication of two members. I'll take two numbers and I'll just come up with the multiplication for the two numbers. So let me do it. But this time, what function is being used? Input of message. So you see here, input of message. What does a message see? Enter first value. Previously, where did we pass the message? Using print function. When you use print function and input function and so on, your number of lines within the code gets increased. So in order to reduce them, we are using input of message function. Okay, so the message will be passed when you execute the input function. See, did the message pass? Yes. So even the end users, if they are non-technical, by just going through this message, they'll understand. What do they understand? Enter first value. So that means if I'm not technically sound, okay, even if I don't know anything, I can understand by reading this message. Enter first value is what I see. So that means it is asking me to enter a value. So let me keep it as 10. Okay, then I click on enter. Done. In the same way, enter second value. So this time I'm going to give it as 20. Done. But the input function, it accepts the data in the format of str type. In order to perform multiplication, we should have numbers. Even though if they are numbers, but which type is used to store them? It is str. So we cannot directly get the product of the numbers. For that reason, we are converting the type from str to float. 10.0 will be stored in x1. 20.0 will be stored in x2. Okay. So in this way, the values get stored in the objects x1 and x2. Then I'm going to perform the multiplication, guys. x1 multiplied by x2. So that means 10 multiplied by 20. 10.0 multiplied by 20.0. So the output should be 200.0 and this 200.0 gets stored in X3. Just have a look. In the variable explorer, you'll have everything. You're supposed to keep an eye on all these panes, variable explorer, console, scripting pane and all. Okay, right. So once the multiplication is done, we are also just printing a message using format function. The values of x1, x2, x3 gets formatted in the message. So the output will be mul of 10.0 comma 20.0 is equals to 200.0 will be printed. Can I reduce it? Yes, I can still reduce the code. I'll just follow the same way. So within the input function, input of message function, I can directly convert the value, the output that I get from the user, the input that I'm going to get from the end user. You can also perform the type casting at the same level. The type conversion can be done at the same level. Okay, once after getting the value, the str type data gets converted to float type. Then same. And finally, the multiplication. Okay, so let me execute. So it is asking us to enter a first value. So I'll just keep it as probably 9. But will it store 9 in x1? No, it will store 9.0. Why? 9 got converted to float. Directly it is getting converted to float. Type conversion is being performed immediately. Okay, then let me execute x2. Let me also give 9. So I just want to get 9 squares as the output. So I'm giving 9 one more time. So 9.0 will be stored in x2 as well. So in the next line, I am going to perform multiplication. 9.0 multiplied by 9.0, it is 81.0. Right? So 81.0 gets stored in x3. Done. And finally printing the results using print function to the console, where we are printing a message and the values using format function. The values gets formatted in the message. Done. It's done. Okay, so in this way we can reduce the number of lines. Okay, the code is same. Whatever we want to achieve is multiplication of two numbers. A Python program for multiplication of two numbers is what we are trying to achieve. Did we achieve? Yes, we have achieved in 10 lines. We have achieved in 6 lines. We have achieved in just 4 lines. Okay, so in this way, you can also reduce the number of lines and we can make the experience better. Okay, and we understood the difference between input function and input of message function. The purpose of the functionality is same, but when you use input of message function at the user level, end user level, they help us to understand the prompting messages. The message that will be written will be understood even by the non-technical persons. Right? Yes. So this marks the end of input function as well. Okay. So I'll just talk about the number of approaches to develop a Python program. Okay. In general, we'll have 2 types. In order to come up or build a Python program, we have 2 types. What are the 2 types of approaches to develop a program? Is an interactive approach as well as a batch mode approach. What is this interactive and what is batch mode approach? We'll understand. Interactive. The name of the approach says interactive. What do you mean by interactive in general? What is the meaning for interactive? Every time I used to say, right, we should have an interactive session. So that means I'll be talking and I also want you guys to talk. Right? So in the same way, interactive approach is an approach where a programmer, give one line of code at a time and they expect the result at the same time for the line of code. This way helps us to build a Python program, the script, but it is an interactive approach. Okay, we are not going to execute all the lines of code in a single time. No, one code will come up with, and one line is going to, we are going to come up with, and this line will be executed. So in this way, we are going to check whether this line of code contain any exceptions or not. Okay, so we are trying to develop our program by interacting, right? With the PVM, Python virtual machine, we are interacting for each and every line of code. But in general, this is not followed. Okay, so what is the best way? The best way is batch mode approach. Okay, so this batch way approach says the programmer to write a batch or group of lines of code, statements, and save it in a .py file, then execute it. Even we follow the same in real time. Okay, batch mode approach is what we follow in the real times, the programmers, developers, and all. And initially, you may follow interactive approach, but we have to stick to batch mode approach only. Making sense? So these are the two types of approaches we have in Python program and the overview. Done. Yes, one-to-one is nothing but interactive. Right. So we had a good session today, I believe, because I see everyone now interacting across the session, and majority of you have given the answers, correct answers, because you guys got involved, right? Yes. So before we wind up the session, any questions, any technical questions? And moreover, if you find the session went well, if it is really good, just hit on the like button. It's a kind of, support that you're going to give us, right? And do share across these sessions in your connections and ask them to learn Python programming at free of cost. Clear? Yes, when you're doing hands-on, and if you get any kind of exceptions, errors, even if it might be non-technical questions, post them in the comment section. We'll respond immediately, guys. Okay? You can ask me your questions, your doubts. All your queries will be addressed. How was the session, first of all? Did it went well? Hope you have understood print and input functions well. Because from long time we are using print function, but majority of us are not aware of print function, right? Yes, this is what happens. Okay, so our trainings will be in the same way. Okay, we want to learn each and every topic to the depth, and we want to be clear on all the concepts. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Yes, even if it is a small topic, I want you guys to be very clear, because, if you take a building, if the basement is not good, if it is not strong enough, I don't feel even though if you come up with 100 floors or 200 floors, it may not withstand for a long time. In the same way, when you're learning a programming language, especially a programming language like Python, okay, which is ruling the world for all the applications, whatever might be the application, they are using Python. And how should we should practice to the extent, right? We have to learn each and every topic, and our basement should be very strong. Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much, guys, for your feedback. And I see the genuine feedback coming today. Thank you. Thank you so much. And the link has been posted. Okay. Give your valuable feedback as well in the feedback link that was being shared. Along with the link, along with the feedback, as a kind of support, hit on the like button and ensure that you have subscribed to our channel, because you have to get the notifications, right? And you should also cross check whether you are part of our WhatsApp channel or not. Because in our WhatsApp channel, we'll be posting all updates. Whatever the programs that we do will be posted in our channel. Okay. So ensure that you be part of our channel as well, WhatsApp channel. Right. Anyways, once again, thank you so much. We'll meet in the next session. Until then, take care. Have a great day. Signing off.